covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Heilman and Jim Bernier.
And welcoming in fans of the 50-yard fight, this is the Inside the Walls podcast. Zach Heilman alongside, of course, my co-host Jim Bernier, who I'll be bringing in, along with a special guest in just a moment. Just wanted to get in. We are entering into episode 95. It is our new rebound episode. I see Jim tried to sneak in. I'll let you in. Come on. That's okay.
My bad.
Step into the show. I see you over there. It's NAL Rebound Week 2 this week, recapping all things from the past weekend in the National Arena League. Plenty of exciting games. 2 coming down the wire, 1 winning by a deuce. We'll talk about that in a moment. But we got to bring on our other special guest. He is a 2-time National Arena League championship head coach and beloved among many in the NAL scene. It is former head coach Tom Manas. It's so weird to still say that. Coach, I still go with that. How are you doing, my friend? Good to see you. How are things?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. I guess this is what happens once you get let go. You go into the broadcast booth for a little bit. Yeah. So I'm enjoying it.
Really, you know, it's kind of like, that's funny how the trend works. Former coaches, former players, just got to bring them back on. Now you're doing the analysis part. This will be fascinating. We did a lot of quick talk in the pre-show, so I'm glad we get to put this onto the live setup for this. But glad to have you aboard. As we're going to get the breakdown, I would say, and not even going to sugarcoat it, 3 exciting games, one that I think many people will have to hold back and say, okay, that's your normal Capital Region football. And yeah, he's got 2 thumbs up, of course. He's feeling great. Coach Ware had a hell of a banner day for his first win as well. Great to see it. We'll save that for middle part here, but let's get into week 2 observations before we jump into the games. Kind of some things we noticed, a few trends in the NAL, I think. First off, I'll lead things off. Kicking, it's been a kind of a talk because of the nets. Some kickers can't always get to the back of the net, but it did impact a few more games this week in terms of getting some bar balls. We got a few more rebounds there. Guys trying to get used to kind of getting the ball. Most of them have been getting them off the turf. I've seen a lot more of that than catching it off the nets, which has been surprising. Coach, I actually like to lead in. What do you think of that? Kind of these strategies here. Obviously, the bar balls you can't predict. That's unpredictable, so it's hard. But catching off the turf, I find interesting that players are making that the choice rather than getting it all in midair.
Yeah, I don't know if it's by choice or by necessity. Remember that ball's an oblong shaped thing with 2 pointy ends, right? And it does not bounce fairly. But I think we talked about this earlier when I think we did our preview show for Albany, and I said that I was really looking forward to seeing the first week how the nets impacted the game. And I don't think they impacted them as greatly as they did in the second week when everyone started figuring out, hey, we can use these things. Mm-hmm. Especially West Texas had great success using the nets on their kickoffs. So, yeah, I think it's going to, now that people realize that, yes, that ball can get to the net. I saw a lot of chatter, people saying, oh, these balls suck and they're terrible and all this and that. It ain't the balls. You might need a new kicker, okay? Because those balls are just fine. And I think Mark up in Albany showed that's fine. And TC to win a game showed that ball is just fine. I don't know why guys were kicking shallow unless that was a strategy. Maybe thinking that, hey, we'll kick down, we'll kick short and cover. I want to say I almost saw a coach advise his kicker to hit the scoreboard. So the ball would go on the 10. Yeah. But
it's automatic 10. I mean, it's pretty nice spot for a defense, too.
It's not dumb. And that's your boy, too, there, Jim, I think. Now, I'm not saying he did it, but he was talking to him right before it happened, and he was kind of pointing that way. The next thing I know, he kicked it and hit the score. If he did it, it was genius because you think about it. You take it out of their hand. There's no chance of a return. They get the ball in the 10, no blood, no foul. You don't lose any points from it.
Yeah.
So
in that specific instance, getting Cleaver shot any chance to return, that's kind of possibly a weapon for disaster. So you might as well hit the scoreboard if you get a chance.
If he planned it, that was smart. Because I'll tell you, at that time, that was a good move. So
yeah. Yeah, and that's been a thing. Even if it hasn't been intentional, you know, I think getting some kicking angles, if you want to get it back to the back into the end zone, or at least trying to hit the net, say you want to get an awkward kind of bounce, you know, I think that's something that teams are going to have to figure out with these arenas as they move forward. Next game in the Freeman Coliseum, I want to see, because that was endlessly hitting the scoreboard, and I don't think Drew Pearson wants to try and do a curveball every time he's trying to go around it so that he can get it back there, because he can get it back there. Clearly, it's just that
he's got a good leg. He's got a good leg. He's got a strong leg, but it seemed like he was struggling to get the ball to the net, you know, this week, and that's uncharacteristic of him. I know when we prepared for him, we always expected a strong leg, and when we competed against him, the interesting thing is, and check me if I'm wrong on this, but there were no onside kicks this week.
No, there were not.
So are we taking the onside kick game away because now that you have an opportunity of kicking it off the net, making it a longer onside kick with greater field possession? And if you don't get the ball, you're not giving them the ball in the red zone on your own end. So I think that strategies as the kicking games develop and continue to get better, and there's some really good special team coaches. I know Orlando has an exceptional special teams coach, and I think that as things start to go further and further, you're going to see more strategies with those nets come into play.
I was going to say, especially with all three games being so close this weekend, I was expecting, or the two games down south, not the one up in Albany, those two games that have a lot more onside kicks during the 1 minute rule, but they never did. You usually, when 5 years, like last year, you saw you did it a lot up in Albany as a coach. Last year, you did a lot of onside kicks. And I was surprised, like when Jacksonville scored the tie it, I'm like, it'd be a good point. Jacksonville do an onside kick here, so and San Antonio get the ball and score first, so they can eat up the remaining of the clock and get some kicks it deep. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting strategy.
Well, see, that was a point that we'll talk about later, but there were some questionable time management parts in these games this weekend. Use of timeouts, use of scoring early, scoring late, just the normal things that come through a game, you know. And I get it. I mean, you know, if the pretty girl's right in front of you now, kiss her while you got a chance. I get that, right? But if you're getting into situations where you know you're good enough to score, take your time moving the ball into position. Don't leave any time on the clock. Don't give anyone an opportunity to have that back. So that was my probably coach's takeaway, was towards the end of some of these games that were close. I think that time management really was a factor.
Well, my week 2 observations for the league is West Texas. Hell of a rebound from last week. That was an entertaining game. I was impressed.
I'll tell you what, West Texas from week 1 to week 2 got better.
Yeah.
They got better. Now, part of that is, and I can attest to this in 2021, you know, the first game you're walking out there and you're thinking, you know, this is what we're doing. This is what we get. Did we prepare enough? Did we get everything done? Now take it a step further. And West Texas had never lost a football game in their team's history. Now, regardless of what league they were in, okay, they had never lost a game. And now they're coming up and they're having to compete, new rules, you know, new everything, new competition much greater. And they kind of looked like it the first week. In the second week, they pinned their ears back and came to play. And I'll tell you what, it's a tough way to lose a game. And that's, again, why you have great kickers, you know, and guys like PC. So
I'd say that's a perfect segue into kind of diving into a bit more of that contest right now. As again, as you can see on the screen, and something that I think people were, it blew, the best ending of the weekend to me was definitely over in Greensboro. And the deuce kick was perfect by TC Stevens, just clears the bar. But, you know, not just that. We had back and forth competition. West Texas came in. I think a lot of people, after, as you guys were talking and as we were saying, they improved a lot this week. And they showed that, you know, they do deserve to be here against a team that did go toe-to-toe with the Gunslingers the week prior. One of the teams that me and Jim, at least, and Coach, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, think are one of the top 2 that could be ending up in August playing in the championship game. So, you know,
but I think West Texas came out and, again, away game. They traveled quite a distance to the game, and they performed really well. They just need to clean up some things. I'll tell you, the one thing that's become really evident is, I think Jacksonville's got a great offensive line. I think Albany's got the best offensive line, but I think they have great offensive lines. And what's coming more apparent is some of these newer teams, their lines just can't compete with some of these AFL, NAL behemoths that have been doing this for a minute, right? And I think once they get adjustments to that and get their line play and get their quarterbacks protected a little bit better and, get comfortable around runs. There's a great example there of another score by West Texas. I think they had 2 touchdowns off the nets on kickoffs, which is fantastic. They're a quick team. There again, like I said, they're a few steps away. I don't see them making the playoffs this year. I see Carolina being the 4th seed this year, and I think that Carolina left about 18 points on the field in that game that they could have had. So again, it's just one of those things. They're going to get better, and so is everybody else.
Yeah, the cleaning up the mistakes, the special team scores, you'll definitely, I would think Coach Fuller and company will be addressing over the week, because it's a little bit more, I guess, getting it not only reactionary, but also just having it more where your back lines are set up to where you can be more adjustable for like a barball. That's hard to predict, of course, but having those type of instances, it's you got to still account for it.
The other thing is, I think Albany, if I'm not mistaken, is probably the only team that's consistently practiced with the nets up every day. So you're going to get that kind of practice every day. When I talked to Coach Fuller, I don't think they had been in their arena to use the nets at all until the game. So that takes an adjustment period, you've got to play off those. And some of these nets are different too.
Yes, they are.
So you look at them and you look at Albany's and they're steel construction this, and these other ones are aluminum and they're a little bit lighter. And so I'm sure the tension and all that's a little bit different, even though they try to keep it as close as possible.
Here's a question I think that I find fascinating, because there are 2 styles of nets, like you've talked. You got the newer sets, they're more like the cross intertwines that they use kind of in starting in the 2010s or late 2000s in arena. And then you got like older squares that are just like you're talking, the tubes, like say in Carolina has. Which one would you rather, both are random, but which one would you rather be wanting to have the ball rebound off of if it hits the bar?
Oh, 100%. I want the steel ones.
Okay.
The girth on them and the mass of them gives you more of an opportunity to hit. When back in the day, when Tampa Bay and in their heyday, we had kickers that you could sit there and say, okay, he's going to kick the left bar and could do it consistently. Scary, but consistently. And we scored 17 points in like 20 seconds in a game to win it. We were down by 14. So, I mean, there's all kinds of great things that can come off those nets. And you saw a couple passes come off the nets this week too.
Yes, we did. One of those games we'll touch on. I have that noted down later on. We talk in Jacksonville, because I was like, yes, that's another arena moment. Love seeing the nets back because of stuff like that.
And
not
to
just
the fans, they're going to get used to it. It's the NAL's been around actively playing since 2017. So they never had them before. This is the first year of them, just like last year was the first year of Iron Man. And as the game develops and people get used to having the nets, they're going to see what a great part of the game it is, because it's going to allow for teams to never be out of the game. If you're close, you got a chance with those nets,
Absolutely. Jim, I want to highlight this to you because some key players for this one. And I think I really want to highlight this for West Texas, because like we were talking with San Antonio last year, how we're looking for key guys that are coming in from the previous years prior. I'll say this without a doubt, LeGrant Pegram is becoming more and more of their go-to star as well. As long as Jalen Childress, you could say, and you saw that pick six he had, that's up for, to me, as an Ironman candidate for their Ironman of the Week award. But I mean, Pegram alone, he was one of the, continuing to be the dominant force on the offensive side of the ball for West Texas. And Smith is getting a lot more comfortable, I think, with those two receivers, very much so after this week.
I know this is coaches speak because I'm an officer here, but the tale is like your best improvement as an organization is between week 1 and week 2 as a team. And Daniel Smith he wasn't really the reason why they lost this game until at the very end where it became a pressure situation. But my opinion, Childress is a dog. Like, he picked 6, 2 touchdowns, the guy was everywhere. And also another guy on the other side of the field that I think it had his coming out party as maybe the receiver now is Adam Smith. Homeboy had 4 touchdowns. He was the go-to guy for McCollum and Malik Henry this weekend. Before West Texas, yeah, that you can see this past weekend at halftime. You look at the score and go, "Hello, West Texas, you have arrived." We said last episode that they're going to go through the San Antonio growing pains in the first year. But they made a tremendous improvement from week 1 to week 2. And I could tell you right now, they're not the last place team in my power ranking. They showed me that they're not. No, even though they're 0-2.
They are.
There were moments in that game I'm like, this is arena football. It was back and forth, and it was crazy.
If you're just watching these highlights, you'll see one overwhelming, consistent thing. There's very little pressure on the quarterback. West Texas is not putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He's having a lot of time to sit back in the pocket, which puts a lot of pressure on your defensive backs, right? They got to maintain coverage longer. And then you flip the page and you're seeing all this pressure coming in on West Texas from Carolina. So, I mean, that's where I get back to, if you want to build a championship team, you got to start inside. You have to. Right. And you can have all the great receivers and the best quarterback in the world, but if he's on his back, it doesn't really matter. And so, yeah, and I think that's where Carolina can continue to build on, is their good line play. And I think that's where West Texas, if they can improve a little bit on theirs, either with scheme or getting some better players. I mean, just that can handle that. But, it's a constant surge. When you're moving the line of scrimmage like that on every snap, that's a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So
one thing I did notice about West Texas, sorry, Zach, compared to week 1, Daniel Smith was getting the ball away a lot faster than he was in week 1. Week 1, he was sitting back in the pocket and getting flustered and getting, back towards the offensive line. It's usually not a good position as a quarterback. This game, it was out of his hands quick. And their offense was moving down the field pretty well throughout the game. But in those tight situations this week against Carolina, where it was 3rd and long, 4th and long, you saw the Daniel Smith that we saw last week couldn't find the momentum, couldn't get that quick pass because Carolina knew what he was doing, and they moved up their DBs, and it's like, you got to beat us deep. And West Texas, as time this past Sunday, couldn't do that. But what I noticed is how you said how they improved. They found what they're good at now, and I think they're going to be a team that's going to be that have to use that quick game to move the ball down the field.
I would say that would be if I tomorrow was coaching West Texas, I'd say, okay, we're going to embrace what we do, and we're going to be the fastest, quickest team, and we're going to scheme around that, as opposed to try to be a blunt force team, right? That's just going to work its way down the field. And I think that's a big part of it. And you're right, that quick game, those quick outs, the hitches, a lot of the wall routes, you can make a living on those in this league. And it's just a matter of keeping the OCs patient, just be okay with first downs. All right. Not every play has to be a touchdown. Be okay with first downs. And I think that's a big part of it.
Right. I'm with you with the hitch routes. In arena, I think a lot of success comes. You don't always have to have the deep passes. Like we talked last year, Malik Henry, I think finally learned you don't just have to chuck it up. And you saw in this game when he had the whole second half to himself, he's learned a lot since he's come a long way. And it's just giving your receivers a chance to make plays on their own, yards after the catch, let them make the misses, let the guys slip up on the turf, get those chains moved, like those fundamentals, you can focus on that. You can take those shots too downfield in this game all the time if you want, but you're probably going to be more efficient if you sprinkle them in somewhat like, kind of like the outdoor side. You don't always want to pitch up one down the field because then you're going to have defenses prepared for that. You're going to expect guys just to be going back to chuck one down for 20, 40 yards on the turf. I
think you're absolutely right. I talked to a couple coaches last week, and one of the things I said is you get first downs or touchdowns, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's about getting first downs. And if you can continually move the ball, you're doing two things. One, you're moving the ball towards the direction of a touchdown. But two is you're also using that clock up. And the longer you have the ball, is less time they get the ball. Okay? So if you try to go, I pity the team that tries to go tit for tat with Albany. You'll get your ass beat by 100. Okay? But if you're going to play in Albany and you slow the game down enough, you might have a chance. Okay. And it's the same way that we sometimes, Coach Ware and I used to do this all the time. I'd be screaming in the headset, run the ball, look at the clock. You got 3.5. And all of a sudden, he'd throw one of his bombs down the field. Of course, Prince would catch it, touchdown. Everybody's happy, right? Well, now they got
safety valve.
Right. But it's hard to complain when you're putting points on the board.
Yeah.
But there is a method to it. I think that I don't know if all coaches really grasp yet is that it doesn't have to be 65-64 and 63-62. It can be 45-30. It can be those games where if you're truly wanting to get the win and not worrying about the scoreboard, just have, control the clock, make sure your time management's right. You work in your personnel, not overtaxing, one group going in before the other group, that kind of thing. Like we like to make changes at around 7.5 minutes would be our first change in a quarter. And then we'd swap them out and then have that second group come in. And if need be, have them go the rest of the quarter if they could, and they were doing well. If not, get them out at around 3.5, put the first team back in. They got their breather, and then you get the break in between quarters. So there was always ways of doing it, but I don't think that a lot of people totally grasp the fact that you can't go tit for tat with some of these teams. Like if I'm going against Carolina, Carolina's a good football team, has the ability to score every time they have the ball. Jacksonville has the ability to score every time they have the ball, right? San Antonio, same thing, right? So how do you beat them? And we'll talk about it, but that's how Jacksonville and San Antonio went. They were going bing, 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 and all of a sudden you got to start looking at the clock.
You have to be.
It comes down to who has the ball last, right? Mm-hmm. So it's about defensive stops, and it's about those other things too. And I think West Texas is going to be fine, but I think they need to embrace the quick game defensively and offensively and do that, because I just don't see them competing with the Jacksonvilles, the Albanys, the bigger, tougher lines and Carolina had a great line. That I thought their offensive line played great for the most part too. So
anyway. It's the same statement I made last week on the show that I got a lot of blowback by. When I said it was Jacksonville, West Texas was like Alabama versus Chattanooga. Yeah, West Texas is going to be in the game for a while, but they just didn't have enough talent or beef to go head to head with Jacksonville for all 4 quarters.
Correct. And that's the truth. I mean, if West Texas, as good as they improved this week, if they were playing Albany next week, they'd get beat by 70. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. Okay. And barring injury and barring this and barring that, and there's nothing you're going to do about it until you change the way you approach playing these guys that have done it at the level they've done it at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, good efforts, at least. I will say, like I said, made for great action no matter what. That's I always will appreciate a good game, and it's good for at least the league's future, at least for West Texas's. That's a great to build that up that way.
But what a heartbreaker, right? I mean,
true. I mean, well, losing by a deuce and then getting sacked to kind of kill time. It's a rough way to go out after the effort you put up all that.
Well, you put, that's the whole point, though. You put in 59.5 minutes of effort. right? And that last 30 seconds kills you every time.
West Texas felt what Jacksonville felt last year in the playoff game with Marco. Like
100%.
we got there, deuce. Man, are you kidding me? That was the main.
Now go back to 21, and Jacksonville did it to Albany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did.
Right, and it was on the deuces. Right. So what I'm saying is that there's certain things you can prepare for. I mean, if you were going to seriously, aside from Mark, I favor him, but who else do you want besides TC Stevens kicking that ball, right? At that time, that's the guy I want. Mm-hmm. Hell, I still want him. If I ever end up someplace, I'm coming for you, TC. But I think he's he was built for that. That moment was built for him, and they were prepared to do what they needed to do. So
another kicker who no longer plays in this league, he plays in another league, was Patterson. He was money for deuces.
You mean Peterson?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
He was money from deuces. Like that's the only thing he was doing.
Right.
Because I remember in Jacksonville, it was him and I think Blanchard for the Sharks. They're going back and forth in deuces. Right. It was of course we had weird wall balls in that game.
Yeah.
That was a traditional 14-point swing in Jacksonville's favor, which was still odd. But yeah, I got to still savor that. That's the only win Jacksonville has over Albany.
You snuck that one in there pretty clean.
Just had to. Based on what I've seen this weekend, may not happen this year either. So, but yeah,
we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. But let's. I was going to say one thing. I was going to say one thing about TC Stevens. I've always said last year, him and Marco were weapons. And Coach Rez and you used your kickers, just not as kickers, but as weapons. And I want to see every coach in this league use their kicker as a weapon, not use him as a safe haven, like play conservative. That's the reason why the deuce is in this sport. It's to make your kicker a weapon. And you and Coach Rez last year executed that with perfection.
Yeah, I think, if I were to give any advice, not that it's asked for, but just give it anyway, is that when I found Mark was the all-time leading scorer at Grambling. Okay? If you can do that, you can kick an arena football. Okay? Right. And his accuracy was everything we thought it would be when we brought him in, and everything we thought about him as a character person was as well. These coaches that find these kickers, I sometimes question, like, that's such a valuable part. That can be worth 2 touchdowns a game, point-wise. You can get 14 points out of a kicker in a game. As much as we scored in Albany, think about it. If we put up 60 points, Mark's going to have another 7 just on extra points, right? And then if we do that and he kicks a couple deuces, by the time we're done, the kid can walk out of there with 12, 11 points every game. And so don't get a kicker because he lives close to the stadium. Go buy a kicker. Go get a kicker. Recruit a kicker as like you would recruit a quarterback, a wide receiver, the same thing. They're just as valuable.
And that'll be, I think, the next frontier moving, maybe even later in the season. I was about to say next year, but knowing the NAL and knowing how transactions are, it could be later in the year too. I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Game, when all the rosters change.
Exactly, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
But, I mean, if you're a playoff team and you need someone like, for example, and I'm not saying this is no slight to Eric Amaya, but great extra point kicker. It's just that I know that's one thing that Fayetteville won't have as a weapon is he cannot get back there to hit a deuce right now. At least I don't think he can, based on what I saw in Orlando. And Orlando's got enough ceiling room for you to clear a kick.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, at least he's making extra points.
Well, true. That's very true.
Right.
I mean, I'd be asking where Jacksonville would be if they would have hit at least one extra one, maybe.
You want to talk about that game? Let's talk about it.
I want to save that little extra. Oh, you're doing it anyway. Okay.
Yes.
Because I wanted to go into that beat down over down in the Capital Region. But okay, we'll go down to Shark Tank and talk about, the overtime slugfest between these two squads, former Shark coming into the tank and Arvell Nelson leading his gunslingers in against Jason Gibson's led Jacksonville Sharks and Connor Blount, who had a banner day himself, second arena game he's been in, and I would say performed admirably well. One thing I loved about the Sharks, first off, you noticed, diversified the portfolio of receivers. I like if a team gets each one of them getting like 60, 70 yards per, because then you have a hard time defenses reading that. The Sharks did a great job kind of putting things together in terms of finding different targets. George Smith, Cameron Solomon, of course. I think that was an excellent job that they did. But meanwhile, the Gunslingers, one thing that kept them in this game, two crucial defensive possessions in the third quarter in terms of a 4-and-out and a fumble recovery for a touchdown that swung the game's possession battle back into their favor to force overtime, to where we even had to talk about Daniel Justino missing one specific extra point kick in that contest. Jim, I'll let you lead off since I let Coach do that last time. Initial thoughts on this contest. I mean, banner one for the NAL in terms of just slugfest and being just top dogs going at each other. But the good games, it always comes down to the little things and what could have been at the very end.
The two things that stand up for me in this game is Connor grew up more. He played a hell of a game this past weekend. He was making good decisions. He was getting out of the pocket, running pretty well for a quarterback. He's not Castronova type of fast, but he was getting on his feet and getting out there. Also, Arvell was, again, over 300 yards passing. He had 6 total touchdowns, but 3 interceptions that kept Jacksonville in that game. If he didn't, there were some interceptions that he threw in that game. And I'm like, you're reading the wrong guy. Like he threw a slant route right
more.
Yeah,
I think it ended the day before. There were a few of them that got just dropped flat out.
The possession before they were going, we were up by 14 and they were going the score to get down with 7. He threw a slant route to Kyle Rashad that almost got picked off by McLean. If McLean would have picked that off, he had 6 years. He was 6. There was no one by him. That would have completely ended the game. Jackson would have been up by 20, 21 points at that time. But again, that didn't happen. Arvell executed. But another guy that, again, we can't talk about San Antonio without Kyle Rashad. The man had 147 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, and homeboy was catching footballs off the wall, off the net. You can tell that the team is starting to find players, and San Antonio are starting to learn the game of arena football, playing the ball off the net, playing the ball off the wall. They're not just like, oh, hit the wall, incomplete. No, they're actually diving for it, which is gaining the experience of what the game is. Another guy that really stood out to me was, again, McLean. 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, and he had 2 interceptions. I think he wins the Iron Man of the Week. With 2 picks, win 5 total touchdowns. That's a hell of a performance.
He's a good candidate for it. Very good candidate.
But also another shout out is to the fan base in Jacksonville. Again, they lived up to the reputation of putting 7,000 fans in this arena. Great showing around throughout the whole league this weekend, which is pretty good. But again, it was a great atmosphere. I was there with a couple of my friends, especially a couple of our fellow NAL friends. It was great. Banter with Coach Shaw a couple of times. He knew who I was, so he smiled. But it was a good showing. It was a good game, and it was a true arena football game. That was a game when walking out of the game, I'm like, you have that feeling like, oh man, we should have won this game, or that game got away from us. I left that game like, you know what, San Antonio and Jacksonville, maybe 1B and 1C in the league, with Albany be 1A. Like, I think Jacksonville and San Antonio are even. They both have strengths. I think Jacksonville's defense is better. San Antonio has a better receiving core, but I think it's just it gelled. It was such a good game, and again, this is the 3rd straight San Antonio Jacksonville series game that has been nail biter to the end, and I'm starting to think there's something brewing between these two teams. Which was pretty exciting. But yeah, San Antonio showed out. Arvell, when he needed to make a clutch throw, he was there. He made a beautiful pass in the 3rd quarter to Barnett, and I'm like, oh, come on, that was a perfectly placed football between 2 guys, and it was really a determination that game how it flipped to San Antonio's favor. But yeah,
well,
San Antonio won, and it was good.
Well, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're talking Barnett as well. Like Rashad, 147, Philip Barnett, 104, just on his own right. I mean, they have they have a true duo of all NAL talent on that side of the ball alone. Plenty of good options. Arvell, I think I insinuated a little bit. You know, he's been getting, I think, up to speed, but 2 picks this game. Could have had more. Both of these contests he's had in the last 2 weeks, I would be a little cautionary because they are able to, when they're explosive, but there's been some times where it's been a lot of luck streaks in terms of defenses not taking opportunities when needed. And that's something I think you got to keep an eye on. Arvell, we said last year, you're almost about guaranteed 1 interception a game with him. He's going to get you your scores, but he takes a lot of chances. Sometimes it does lead. It's a gunslinger mentality. Funny, the pun intended, I guess, but we'll take it. We'll take that and run with that joke. Coach, I want to bring something up that I think you brought up well in the pre-show that I think we want to discuss. And, you know, it seems like the beginning of the years with the NAL, we kind of deal with these kind of things. And then a lot of stuff was done in the offseason to address this, which was kind of the flow of the game, you know, kind of making it a true arena game, not just the scoring, but just keep things moving, getting the pace going. And this first quarter, you know, it ended the rest of this contest, 2nd through 4th, fantastic. Like endless moving back and forth. Penalties weren't slowing things down, or, you know, talks about technicalities and such. But that first quarter, you know, if you're a fan, you had to wait through a lot of stoppages. And that's something that, you know, when you're on broadcast, I kind of go, oh, come on, guys, we got to get this going. You know, I'm very much like that. I want these things moving, you know?
Well, and I think in the offseason, the commissioner did everything in his power to try to, you know, the ideal situation is have the games come in around 2.5, 3 hours tops. And I think this one was over 4. And to me, the thing about it was that I thought, and I didn't bring it up. Actually, my wife brought it up. We were watching the game and she said, look at the crowd. And when there was like 2 minutes left to go in the game, and the crowd had thinned out significantly because it just went too long. The game just went too long, and people had to go home, and kids needed to be put up, and the whole bit. But it went a little long. We'll just say that. Now, they're doing everything in their power with only 1-minute review on challenges, 13-minute half times, you know, all those little things. And, you know, Jax, though, way to turn out Sharks fans. I mean, that's, you know, there's nothing greater that a coach and players want to do is be in that kind of audience, right, and have that around them when they're playing and doing their trade. So major props for them. You brought up an interesting point that, you know, we had talked about this early in the offseason, and Coach Gibson wasn't shy about saying this, that he was going to build a defensive-minded team this year. He said it. Well, guess what? You can't say that and let somebody score 60 points on you. Okay? Yeah. So you either gotta fix the defense or get a better offense going, because your offensive line was pushing them around. Alexander had a few great plays, which he's always going to have. He's a really dynamic edge rusher. He's going to get those. But your offensive line was pushing their big guys down in the red zone all the way to the back wall. You see Angus getting blocked all the way to the back wall on the first score. I mean, I think their linemen are generally better. I don't think San Antonio's line is up to the level of their receivers and their quarterback and their specialist play. They're great guys. They're hungry, and then they'll fight you, which is what you want. But again, you got to know your audience. You know, who are we playing? We're playing a really tough Jacksonville team. We got to have a strategy to go against those big linemen and how we're going to do it, and not allow pressure on offense if you're San Antonio. What do you say about Rashad, except, you know, awesome.
Yeah, that,
you know,
that's about as all you can do right there.
But you can do that across the board. Barnett, you know, that was probably one of my biggest regrets, that we couldn't come to terms in 2022 to bring Phil back to Albany, right? But that happens. You know, that's what happens when you win championships. Guys test other waters. And so that, to me, though, their receiving core is legit. Their quarterback plays legit. They just need to tweak some of the line play, I think. and count on more than just Alexander. They got to shore up that middle. They got to do much better at the nose position. They got to get someone in there that's going to anchor and be the guy and not jump off sides and get silly penalties. And Jacksonville's going to consistently be good. Coach Gibson is going to coach them up the right way, and they're going to be good. I think that's part of it. Again, my only critique is that little time management issue that I have with how the game went down and possession and that type of thing. And I think it could have ended a little differently with a different strategy at the end, but armchair quarterbacking, which is cool. I get to do it now, but, and that's the thing though. I think it's just, that could have been a factor in it, leaving time on the clock.
Right. Give a little more sense of urgency would have been nice, and again, you can, OT. I mean, it came down to the wire. Like I said, I think to me, when you look at like Jacksonville, I think my questions of, well, why is this not? You're talking about a game that in mid third quarter was a two possession lead. In some rights, how I equated 3, because again, if you tie it up and you get the ball next, you should technically have the advantage going back down. And within a span of less than 2 minutes, you see a 4-and-out touchdown convert, fumbles on one play into the end zone, and then you're just like, whoa, wait a minute. And you can't do that against a team like San Antonio, though. You have to play perfect football.
And here's the thing is, I'm not trying to be overcritical to any one team or another. The one thing I will say about San Antonio is, and I've said this for the last 2 years with you guys, when a team learns how to win, they refuse to lose. Okay? That's the mindset in Albany. San Antonio's figuring out that they can win now. And they're never out of a game, so they're never putting themselves out of a game. And I think Coach Shaw and Jay Rich down there and those guys are instilling that in them, that they're starting to get a winning game mentality. Like, we're going to win this game. When they get off the plane, we're going to win this game. Not, gee whiz, I hope we play good and this and that. And I think you see that more so with them, where they came at this game like, we're going to win this game. And Jacksonville was like, we hope we win this game. That's not a cut. No. It's just what I noticed is that I think San Antonio, from a head standpoint right now, I would have to put them at 1B or 2. 1, Albany 1, San Antonio 2, Jacksonville 3, Carolina 4 would be my call today. And that's, like you said, though, Jimmy, Jacksonville and San Antonio, that can flip 3 times this year. Somebody goes on a bum streak, somebody gets a ding, someone rolls an ankle. Yeah. You lose 3 games in a row.
Well, in the season prediction show I did, I have Jacksonville and San Antonio playing each other 3 times this year, like 2 times in the regular season and in the playoffs. I think we're seeing the 2 versus 3 matchup right on the screen right now. I think that you're going to see these 2 teams play each other, nail biters all throughout the year.
Well, I want them again now. Like, this game just makes me want to go back. I love games like this. I love the close arena games like this where you see in the powerhouses, because I just want to go back to it right away. Give me a 60-60 game coming down where I have no idea what the conclusion is going to be, because that's how arena is. It should be chaotic at the finish. Okay,
look at the clock right there, right? Yeah. Look at the board. It's 56-62, and I built my team for defense. You got to explain that to me. If you gave up 56, that means that, when you build a team for defense, that's 2 stops a quarter. Okay, right. That's what you want, is 2 stops per quarter. And that's all I'm saying is, maybe that was just something he said, I don't know, or something that a coach would say, but no, you can't give up 62 points and say we were built our team on defense. You have to get stops, and I'm sure that's what he's preaching to him today and talking to him about, is that, look, we got to get stops. Stops are wins. Stops are points for us, and we preach that like anybody else, is that. And I know Coach Gibson, being a defensive guy and defensive minded guy in that sense, but 62 points, can't do it and call yourself a defensive team.
Right. Well, they'll have to adjust really quick, because if Fayetteville is anything like they were against Orlando week 1, which we'll find out pretty soon. Orlando, we're finding out a lot as of this last game in week 2, but if Fayetteville comes out swinging just like they did week 1 and surprised everyone in the NAL out of the gate, that's going to be probably, you might be running into the same script in the Crown Coliseum for that home opener.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about Fayetteville because I didn't prepare for them yet, you know, in the sense that we didn't have film on them. They only played the one game. I was gone from Albany by the time I'd start looking at their stuff again. But, you know, the thing about it is, yeah, great. Now let's see what you can do against the big boys.
Yeah, Fayetteville's first test is this weekend, this Saturday, Sunday at 3:00 against Jacksonville. So that's going to be a step up in competition, especially a Jacksonville team that went toe to toe with what you just said. In your opinion, the second best team in the league. So,
no, I got Jacksonville beating them by 30.
Okay.
Well, all right. Okay. We might have to bring you back next Monday.
I do. And that's not a cut against Fayetteville. It's how I think Coach Gibson's going to prepare his team for this next win.
Well, that
he
was
knows how important it is to come out and not be 1-2, you be 2-1. And he's been, you know, I think he's a great coach, and I think he's going to get him ready to play Fayetteville with a little chip on his shoulder about that stuff that we got.
We have no doubt about that. Dude's, I mean, he's all about the fundamentals, all about executing as well.
Right.
So that's definitely something he's going to want to be like, look, let's get back on, let's rebound this. Again, no pun intended. Well, let's definitely get this. I swear I'm pun happy today, and I usually am, but that's okay. That's okay. And like I said, I think, you know, Fayetteville, great to get a first win out of the gate, but I think we'll end with this final game on the docket. Your former Albany Empire taking on Orlando. The Empire way continues, but boy, there are a lot more questions about Orlando's season ahead, I think, that came out of this one. And I think that's a bit more of the storyline to me, because a lot of us going into this year, you know, got you constructing this roster, of course, and now your colleague Damon Ware leading this win, of course. I think a lot of us, we have them as the top dogs. We didn't have any doubts. We were pretty confident they were going to walk away with this, but I didn't think they were going to walk away like this. Almost a 40-point swing.
I'd be honest with you. I thought they were going to score 100. I was a little disappointed in that. No, I'm just kidding. But it's, you know, keep one thing in mind. You know, like Coach Gibson said, he was building a team for defense. Like Coach Shaw said, he was going to build a good offense this year. You know, this, that, whatever. I built this team to win a three-peat. This team was designed to win 3 championships in a row. 14 returning vets off the same team in 2022. You know, the team is there. You would be hard pressed to find a weak spot. You know, Coach Ware's now putting his little spin on things, and he's going to continue to do that. I talked to him today. Congratulated him. You know, I love the guy. We're like brothers. We've been together through 2 years of wars together. So we've grown real close in the off seasons and everything. That team is not going to get beat this year. The only team that's going to beat that team this year is that team. And that might be, you know, not self-inflicted. It could be, you know, an injury. It could be, God forbid, something like that. Or it could be travel, or it could be whatever. It could be something that gets in the way. But if they continue on the path that they're on and what's been built there, they're not getting beat. They're going to go 14-0 and then go on.
We're running out of things to say about it, and obviously the 14 veterans being there, but you know, some of the contributors, of course, being brought in to kind of buoy the rest. You know, it's an incredible core of guys. And like I said, the usual faces you see make plays. Darius Prince and Sam Castronova connecting like crazy. Markel Wade continuing his progress from last year. You know, Dwayne Hollis as well. And then, of course, Nick Hagan, Trayvon Shorts anchoring down that defense along Brandon Cisse.
I mean, you know? look at that defense. That was like a championship game effort again, you know, to hold a team to 30 points.
Arena, you know, 33 in arena is nuts.
Right. And, you know, you're talking, what is that, less than 6-7 points a game, or around 7 points a quarter, a little 8 points a quarter. That's almost ridiculous in arena football. Now, we're seeing all this positive stuff about Albany, which is well-deserved. You know, obviously the receivers, the defense, I think Haig had 2 sacks. Brandon Cisse put pressure on all day from the middle. Cornelius Lewis and Hardy on the, playing the tight end and guard, blocking exceptionally well. Hollins in the middle at center, Harvey, all those guys. I thought they all did across the board. You'd be hard pressed to give a game ball if you were in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the polar opposite for Orlando, unfortunately. Okay. I love Herky. I've said it on your show before, and I truly feel for him at this point because we've all had seasons like this if you coach long enough. I've had a 1-13 season before, you have them that it's going to happen if you coach long enough. You try to just make them one instead of a bunch of them, but they're going to happen. Right now, if they don't fix, what's broke, it's going to be hard pressed to win a game. It's going to really be hard pressed to win a game. And I think that you need an experienced quarterback. We had brought Hessen to Albany. He's a great kid, great story, great measurables. I just thought he needed another year when we released him. I thought he needed to get seasoned in indoor football a little bit. I don't think you're going to get seasoned when you're getting your ass kicked every play, with the defense on top of you and throwing you around like a rag doll. So I think that there's a lot of places that need to get fixed there, but number one would probably be culture. They've got to bring in people that want to compete and play their ass off and do what's necessary to win a football game. They've got to.
It's going to be hard for me. I think not only for that, but to me, I'm hoping, and I imagine they are talking about this already, that the transaction wire, I expect Orlando has to be soon, that you guys start seeing some new talent flux in, because now without Jack Sheehan being there, I mean, again, Joseph Hess, that was a surprise seeing him trot out being the starting quarterback, because we were expecting, all right, Jack was the silver lining against Fayetteville. If they were able to play a second half, then this is a competitive team. But now you got an unexperienced duo of QBs. Now we got a defense that doesn't seem to, as we talked last week, is like a wet paper towel. That's a recipe for disaster right there.
Well, yeah, and I just don't, again, I love Nate and John down there, the owners. I think they're great people, and and Herky and his guys. I can't, without being there, I'm not going to speak on behalf of anybody, but part of being in this league is you got to be self-aware. You got to self-scout your team. Coach Ware and I used to self-scout us every Monday, and we'd say, how would we have beaten us on Saturday? And we'll sit down and we'll break us down, and we'll say, oh man, we weren't very good here, or we got to get better here, or we need to be better here. And then we'd look at the transactions and we'd make some phone calls and we'd keep our board going, that if we had to, could we bring in somebody if we can't fix what's broke? I just don't think you can say, well, this is my roster, I'm going to live with it, and hopefully everything goes well. I don't think that's fair to your coach. I don't think that's fair to your players and the other guys that are on the team. I think now's the time when it's early. Now, keep in mind this, right? This is the other scary part. They only played 12 games.
Right.
You're not going to get those 2 games back. Those are you're not going to get them back where you can say, well, we can change our course by improving our win-loss ratio down the road. No, you only got 10 left now. And you got to fix them. And I think they can. And I've always said this, there's good Lord, man. I'd love to be able to recruit down in Florida.
Could you imagine?
Just open up my back door and go, okay, I want you. I'd be at Florida State. I'd be at every college campus and say, hey, I don't need the All-American. I need the second team All-American. Come with me.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that you have this surplus of unbelievable talent. We talk about Eddie Brown. That's where Eddie Brown's from, right?
Yeah.
So there's this unbelievable talent pool down there, and I just don't see it translating on the field. I just do not see it. And it's unfortunate because I love those guys, and I love the Preds. I do. I always said this. My dream season was Albany and Orlando in the championship game, because obviously my affection for the ownership in Orlando, but it ain't happening this year. Not like this, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on a little bit of brights. I know with the 70-33 butt kicking that was this past week, and there's really not a lot of bright spots to look at. But one thing I do like about Orlando is that we see the arrival of Prince Shinola. He was basically kind of a no-show last week. He became the #1 receiver. One thing that Zach mentioned in last week on game day is that Orlando needs to give Lonnie Outlaw the ball more. It started in the first half where Lonnie was getting his catches and the offense looked pretty good. I'm like, okay, they have a chance. And I remember texting you, Coach, saying Orlando needs to play their A game, and hopefully Albany plays their C game, and they might have a chance in this game. And that clearly didn't happen.
No,
well, Coach, I don't mean to jump in, but you know this. Like Lonnie in 2021, that was Columbus's guy, and you saw this in the championship.
I recruited Lonnie. I recruited Lonnie. Okay, that's how much I think of Lonnie. Okay, I recruited Lonnie. I think Lonnie's not healthy. I think that he had an ankle going into this game, and I just don't see how you don't go to Outlaw, in the second half. How do you not just lean on your stars? How do you not lean on guys that have been there and done it before? And you're right. Shinola did great. I mean, he came. It was basically his coming out party, right? But again, we're talking about 2 football players, okay, on a 21-man active game roster,
right? And
that's what I've been preaching for 2 years to this league. It's not I got 5 great guys or I got 4 great guys. You got to have 15, 18 great guys, and I'm talking warriors and then a couple soldiers to mix in with them. But you can't rely on 2 or 3 guys to make all the plays, and that poor kid, that quarterback was running for his life,
Yes.
Speaking of 2 guys who actually did well was Sam Castronova for 229 yards, 6 total touchdown, and the GOAT himself, Darius Prince, 9 receptions for 151 yards passing, a touchdown. Give me those 2 guys any game. Come on.
Well, yeah, but again, I'll say this, and I love Sam and Darius that they had great games, and kudos, fantastic. You're not doing that without Hardy and Cornelius Lewis and Brandon Cisse and Nick Hague, and I can go on and on and on. Now, it could even been worse because there were a couple errant throws early by Sam that were in the end zone and could have been scores. Now, ultimately, we ended up scoring anyway because I think they scored on every single possession they had the ball, which gets me back to my point about defensive stops win games. Okay, so they scored every single time they had the ball, except at the end, and the clock ran out. So the whole point being that until teams really cultivate a pool to surround your talent with. And again, I changed subjects, but those 2 errant throws, and you could tell, excited first game that Albany played this year, they're going to get better. As scary as that sounds, they're going to get better, and they're going to get better every week. And if someone's going to play them, they just better bring one hell of a game plan and, pray for rain, because it's not going to be pretty. It's not.
The only
is this arena open air?
I was going to say the only dome that actually rains is in L.A.
Yeah, right. And that's why it would be one hell of a prayer. Yes, no, but the thing about it is that you talk about I know there's a lot of noise going around now about other things with the Albany Empire, but and I've tried to put out there, I'm good, everybody's good, the players are good, the football's great, everything else will catch up to football, because that's how we built the Albany way. The Albany way wasn't started in the front office. The Albany way was started on the football field by the players and coaches. Okay. And it was cultivating a winning philosophy that that no matter what happens, we're never out of it. We're always going to win this game. These guys, man, I'll tell you what, it's going to get scarier than you can imagine down the road, because I don't think anyone's really going to have a way of figuring things out. Now, interesting, we just saw Mark there kick the deuce. He had 3, which again, I talked about having a great kicker.
Yeah.
Mark's no longer with them as of right now.
Yes.
So Mark has gone on to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL, and they just recently signed a new kicker. I think by the time the show airs, it'll probably be public anyway. But the thing about it is that that's an integral part of Albany's game. Now, I can tell you what Coach Ware's doing. Coach Ware's going to bring in the best possible kicker that he knows is going to meet the needs of the team. But trust me, if that kicker isn't the right guy, that kicker will be there 1 week and they'll fix it. And that's the difference, is that when we had a problem, we would address it right away and fix it. We wouldn't wait 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 losses and then fix it. So I think that's critical.
Can't kick. You're going to get, I think, maybe get a check out of this. Can't kick out of bounds, though. Anymore.
I think that was genius myself.
For one season, last year it worked. That's all you got to say. It works, right?
We got a cheap shot on our kicker. He breaks his leg, right? I've got no kicker. God love that kid we brought in. That poor kid. Coach, I can kick it. No, you can't. Don't even try. Just kick it over there in the 3rd row. But coach, I can kick it there. I can kick it. And I said, no. And then one time he kicked it. He defied me, and he kicked it inbounds, and Rashad ran it back to like 3 or something. And he's walking over and he's not looking at me. And I got my hands out like for his neck, right? And he goes, I know I screwed up. And I said, yeah, you screwed up. Don't ever do that again, or I'm going to have Brandon Cisse kicking off. Yeah, so it was pretty bad. Yeah. If you guys only knew half the stories, man, they go on down there.
Arena football, if there's one thing we know, it is the stories of itself. You can make a TV show out of leagues like this. I swear.
No, you'd have to sell it as fiction because no one would believe it.
Yeah.
Well, the stories do come out, but it's only about 5% of the story that makes it on the message boards.
Right.
And that's usually the loudest of the 5%, and 95% of it's not out in the public, which is actually the truth.
You know what? I never could figure this out, right? I could never figure out why people with so little knowledge of a situation are the first to voice their opinion, right? And then the people who know, we kind of sit back and we chuckle at it until it gets out of hand, and then we try to diffuse it, right? But it's like wildfire. You kind of wonder, don't these people have jobs? I mean, it's crazy.
Well, it's the arena community. It's just not this league. It's every league.
It's the NFL community. It's the USFL community. It's the XFL community. You're gonna get a segment of every group, right? That just feels good about saying bad stuff.
It's like Adam Schefter. Like, he broke Tom Brady news weeks before it was supposed to be official, and then he got pretty much axed, and he had no connections, and he hasn't recovered since.
Right. Exactly. Well, I mean, I think I can say this openly, is that over the course of my career, not just in the NAL, but my whole career, is that I've always had great relationship with the media. And one of the things about the media is because I don't have a filter. They love me, right? Because I'll just say it and then I'll apologize later if I have to, but it just usually comes out. It's not a flattering compliment, trust me. Okay, so, but with that in mind, is that I'll always have off-the-record conversations with people. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing, though. It's not about bashing someone because you go off the record. It can be a good thing that you want to go off the record on. So I'll say to people all the time, if you want to talk off the record, I'll talk to you. And then I'll give them my feelings on something. If you want to go on the record, I'm giving you nothing but fact, and you're getting nothing out of the story. And that's the thing, is that Coach Ware and I used to always say this together. if a player comes in and says, I think we ought to do this, we would always say, great, put it on the board and show us. I want to see fact. I don't want to hear what you think. I want to see fact, why it will work. So we're not opinion guys. We're fact guys. We want to hear
your thesis and your argument is what, something like that.
It's the truth, though. I mean, you look at them, and that's kind of what we were talking about with these teams, is that I guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee you, but I can say this. I know for a fact in Albany for the last 2 years, we self-scouted every week. So while other teams are game planning for us, we would spend one day of just figuring out how to beat us. So it's sometimes more important to not worry about what the other guy's doing. Have them prepare for what you're doing, right? In a sense, is that if all you're worried about is what they're going to do, you're never going to figure it out. I mean, you're going to get some tendencies and you're going to get some things, but you're never, ever going to know when he's going to call a play. You're never, ever going to know if he changes his mind. It's a human element to it, right? So self-scout. And that's what we would do ad nauseum. We would come up with scenarios. In the Jacksonville game, in the championship game, or the playoff game last year, we literally practiced that scenario on Thursday. 47 seconds left. Here's what we got to do. Blah, blah, blah. Where's on the field? I'm on the bench. I get on the headset with Ware. I go, did you look at the clock? He goes, I know, eerie, isn't it? He goes, we're going to win this thing. And I said, yep. And we did. And it played out exactly the way we ran at practice because, again, it's prepping for yourself, not prepping necessarily just worried about the other guy. Until you fix what's in your house that's broken, it doesn't matter, It really doesn't, and I think that's a key part of it right now is that Jacksonville could be a solid number 2, no ifs, ands, or buts. They don't have macro changes. They have micro changes they got to make, right? San Antonio, same deal. They could hold on to 2 and flirt with 1. Micro changes, not macro changes. Orlando, macro changes. West Texas, macro changes. They have to make, just because you were close in a game doesn't mean you fixed your problem. You still lost or you won, whatever the case may be, right? You still have to fix yourselves all year long. And you don't stop fixing it after the first 2 games. You're fixing it in the playoffs. And I don't know if they do that yet.
Still, it's amazing. Still early in the season, but it's
you don't fix it now, man.
Right. Exactly. It's prime time. Do it now. You got the samplers. Now it's time to be ready for the entree.
The muck group, right? The muck.
The muck. That's what we call it. The muck.
I like that. Okay, the muck. All right. You're 0-4 in this league this year. It's a runaway.
Yeah, sayonara. Sayonara.
It's not going to be as close as people think it's going to be. There's going to be the 4 and then the other 3.
I think it's more be the top 3. Then you're going to have 4 and 5 close to each other, and 6 and 7 are going to be so far behind.
You're probably right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I really would, because and that's the thing though, is San Antonio couldn't be in a better position. Why? They only played 12 games this year. And they're 2-0. That's a great spot to be in.
I'm just happy to have bye weeks this year. We went 14 games out of the bye week last year.
Dumbest thing I've ever seen anybody do.
We have too many byes. We got like 3 or 4. No, San Antonio has 4. We have 3. So yeah, there's so many bye weeks.
But see, look at Orlando. Doesn't Orlando have like 5?
Yeah.
Yes, because the 12 game.
But with the benefit about San Antonio, if they do get in the playoffs, let's say they get the 2 seed, they technically have a bye because their last bye week is week 15. So they'll have a week off, then go in the playoffs. That's for their 12 games for them starting 2-0.
They got the best schedule. Yeah, starting 2-0. That's what I'm saying. San Antonio couldn't be in a better position right now than they're in. Now, who does San Antonio have next?
Off. Oh, Albany. They're at Albany.
No, they're at
That's our game of the week this week.
Yeah, they're at Albany this week. They're going to get beat, and then they're going to end up being 2-1. Albany will be 2-2, sole position of first place, and they won't give it up the rest of the year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll mark you down in our pick.
Hey, I can't say anything because every time I say something anti-Albany, especially there was a certain coaches show up north that kept patching me every weekend. So, like I said in preseason,
that coach's show's gone, man.
Yeah.
But give me credit, man. Gotta defend your guys. So we'll, that was always nice to hear that side of that too.
That's the fun part of the banter that people enjoyed. I know the Albany fans loved it, right? They got a big kick out of it. And the drinking game, and I go someplace and someone will say Jacksonville, and they're holding up a beer, or something. Yeah, no, that part of it, I'm gonna miss those people. They were great. Capital Region was fantastic. Can I take a minute and just say
yes,
thank you to them? Well, okay.
Go ahead.
So I haven't had a chance to. I've done it in writing a few times, but I haven't had a real chance to say thank you to the people of the Capital Region in the city of Albany. I've already said my thank yous to the team. They know how I feel about them. I love them to death. I love my players. I love Coach Ware. I love Coach Custer and the guys that are there, Paul and James, helping out in the coaching. But I never got a chance to say thank you to the fans and just the people that live in the Albany area, the Capital Region. Thank you for making my family feel so welcome. And the hardest part of all of this, aside from not getting the opportunity to get you that three-peat myself, is knowing it's in good hands. So I'm good with that with Coach Ware. But not getting a chance to say thank you personally. Right. You've been great to my family. You always made us feel welcome. And I'll never forget you for that. And I'll always have a spot in my heart for you. So
we're glad we get to have you on here for that. And again, glad to get to talk to you again. Like I said, we always love having you on the show. You know that. It's
sure.
These are some of our favorite conversations. That's not. I see you. You put that sarcastic card. But we talk about this on show too. We're like, yeah. Coach Manas jumps on. We're like, we can't miss this talk. We have to be ready to go.
Here's the thing. There's a certain team broadcaster down in San Antonio that thinks Manas should be the John Madden of the NAL and be on the show permanently. Right now,
I'll tell you this. Here's my plans. I'm being my agent. God love him. He's keeping busy right now. We're taking a lot of phone calls and talking to some people. But I'm going to be very, very picky in my next job selection where I go. And so I got turkey hunting season opens up. Spring turkeys opens up Saturday. Mm-hmm. But all I'm doing is, and this may sound odd, but I think I told you in the pre-show, I'm watching film. I watch film. I break down film. I get an opportunity to work on my craft, try to become a better coach. And I'm going to continue to do that until, I hang my shingle at the next job, but anytime you need an old cranky guy on your show, let me know.
You'll be one text or call away. We know that for a fact. So, but folks on here, you might want to be prepared for a little bit more Tom Manas later on in the year, because we'll be hitting him up. If he's watching film, he's going to be keeping himself razor sharp. So we'll get to hear it. And he's been keeping up with the league too, of course, as you can clearly see. He's not done watching arena football, so he'll get to see his guys and his team. It's still Damon Ware coaching. That's his good buddy. He's going to be keeping up with that.
That's my brother. That's my brother. Yeah. And support, and that's the biggest thing. I've gotten so many kind words from the fans, but when you see Coach Ware up and down the sidelines, grab him and give him a hug and tell him you love him. You did that for me, and I want you to do that for him. He's a great guy.
I hope I can get one more chance to go to Capital Region to say hi. Hi, at least to him now. At least to
you will. When's the championship game this year? Hey, I'm not shaving the playoff beard. I told you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already there, baby. So we're good.
Save it for Christmas. Throw on a Santa's cap.
There you go. I'll do whatever it takes. Hey, I may need to make a living by then if I don't have something locked up.
Tom Kringle in the house.
Yep, you bet. You bet. Sure.
Jim, any parting words before we wrap up and whisk ourselves away to a preview show down the line?
Good week of football. this week 2 was less chaotic than it was last year's week 2. Ironman rule has not been an issue, so every team's getting excited now. It's up to week 3, and I want to see what Fayetteville is, and going up against a team of Jacksonville, and I want to see again if San Antonio is good enough to go toe to toe with Albany, or is Albany again the Albany way? So there are only 2 games next week, and we'll have this is the game of the week: San Antonio at Albany. We will have a special guest. I already have 2 people lined up. They both texted me literally during the show. I will think we may side with one. Moss mentioned them a couple times in the show, so we'll have a special guest from the Albany Empire to preview the game of the week: San Antonio and Albany.
Awesome.
Okay. Gonna be great. Well, read between the lines. You'll hear from us soon enough. Anyone watching or listening, by the way. And seriously, if you haven't checked out the video version that we do on YouTube, you might want to do that. Like I said, that me chuckling randomly, that's not just me doing that because I'm a psychopath. It's because I'm laughing at you guys on the camera. So be sure to go over, hit the subscribe button, click the bell. As a good buddy of mine on my other show for the USFL says, it builds morale. And then follow us on @InWallsPod for more content from us. Great graphics from Jim, by the way, as well, because he'll throw those up. Coverage during games and many other things. If you want to follow all things true arena football. So
love it.
Stay tuned.
And
great
highlights.
job, guys.
And highlights. Until then, guys, we'll catch you on the next one. Episode 96 around the corner. Week 3 of the NAL's around the corner. See you then.
Covering all your favorite parts of the 50-yard fight. This is the Inside the Walls podcast with Zach Heilman and Jim Bernier.